The Public Safety Commission in this city. I served on it for 10 years. I worked for the LAPD for 8 years prior, a long time ago when I had hair. Today is a solution-based meeting. Now, I know that there's a lot of emotions in this room. Some of you were unfortunate enough to lose the structure or lose something in the fire. We all have our stories. But today is not so much about pointing fingers. Today is talking about how we move forward as a community. What steps need to be taken to move forward. I want to remind everybody that this meeting is being live streamed and videotaped, so your comments will be public. We have a group of people assembled behind me, and each person is going to make a couple of minutes, speak for a couple of minutes. After we've gone through the panel, we're going to open it up for a question and answer. Again, I want to remind everybody, the question and answer is not pointing fingers, it's asking how we can move forward. All right? I understand and I know that everybody's upset. Trust me, I was humping hose in this fire for 4 days and I still can't breathe right. So I just want to put that out there as a disclaimer to start with. And thank you all for coming, for taking some time on a Sunday morning to visit with us. Our first distinguished visitor is our new sheriff for the County of Los Angeles, and I'd like to introduce Alex Villanueva.
I want to thank CeCe and company for inviting me here today, and I had to be here because I came here in the middle of the night to Pepperdine, the staging area, about the day 3 of the fire, just to check on the deputies and see what was going on, because I just heard from a lot of feedback from deputies that the situation wasn't acceptable. It wasn't going as it should have gone. And bad things happened. However, we learned from what happened. We dissected, figure out where we went wrong, and we're going to put it back together and make it right from this point forward. And unfortunately, I didn't know that I was officially going to be elected until 6 days before I was sworn in, so things are happening very, very fast. And however, that pales in comparison to some among you who have lost your home, lost all your possessions, and my heart goes out to you. I feel that pain. I lived through several hurricanes in Puerto Rico. My brother and sister survived Hurricane Maria, and just the feedback I got from them, it kind of echoes in your community, the devastation, desolation, where everything that you knew is just literally gone. To the point there's not even leaves on the trees that are left. All the houses are gone. Everything is. They didn't have electricity for 6 months. They said that was not too bad. It was the water for a whole week was the hardest thing that they didn't have. But they recovered, they adapted, and reverted to 1850 for a while. But now they're back on their feet, Lord willing. Same thing's going to happen with this community. The rain is good. Now we're going to start getting green again. We're going to start growing again. And we're going to have to start figuring out how can we prepare ourselves for future events. Because unfortunately, we live in a very unstable environment. We're going to have the wildfires. We're going to have the mudslides. We're going to have the earthquakes. We're going to have the storms. And we're sitting right next to the ocean. You know it's going to come this way at some point. And, or, you know, heaven forbid we get a tsunami or something, that'll be another disaster. But all those things are possibilities. So we have to keep in mind where we place ourselves and we live, we're vulnerable. And on top of that vulnerability, if you're a vulnerable person, you have mobility issues, you're restricted, bedridden or house restricted, mobility access things, that means your ability to evacuate in a timely manner is compromised. All these things we have to know in advance. We have to make sure in law enforcement side of the house, we can be preparing an orderly way to evacuate and quickly, efficiently. Everyone saw what happened up in Paradise where they were caught literally, they cooked in their cars because they were not ready for that type of high-speed event. I don't think anyone really anticipated it. But going backwards and looking at where they were located, they were a sitting duck. It was going to happen at some point, and it did exactly what happened. Fortunately, our death toll was not what there was. However, just by the grace of God and Lord knows what else, it wasn't. We want to make sure that when we do have these things happen, we're prepared, we get out in time, you get your valuables with you, and if you lose a house, you lose your furniture, your clothing, that's easy to replace. That's not a problem. But you can't replace our lives, you can't replace those cherished belongings that mean so much. So we want to make sure we're in a good position, we have a proper plan, and we're going to execute that plan. So we're going to learn from this. So let's pick apart what our experiences were, the good ones, the bad ones. I saw a photo that you showed me today about PCH, and the photo itself told me volumes about there's something wrong with this picture. So let's fix those little details that become very, very big. And I'm redoing the entire organization. The leadership team of the organization is changing, as you probably are aware. And am I getting some heat for it? Probably, but that's not my concern. I'm going to do what the right thing is. I said I was going to clean house. That's what I'm doing. And at the end of the day, you're going to have a leadership team throughout the organization, station level, division level, emergency operations bureau, all these different entities that you rely on to have an orderly disaster preparedness. It's all going to be in place, and you're going to feel confident that we have this. We can handle this. So anything I can do to help you, let me know. Let my station management know, let my command staff know, and we're going to take care of it. All right, thank you.
We're a community and we're grieving. And a lot of people are still in their grief process. People have lost homes, have lost possessions, and it's okay to be sad. And I'd like to bring up Dr. Ronda Hampton, a psychologist, to talk a little bit about PTSD and the grief that we're going through as a community. Doctor.
Let's see if I can stay. Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay. See if I can stay in my 5-minute time.
Wow, as long as you need.
I'll do the best I can. I gotta be. Okay, this doesn't count for my 5 minutes.
Okay.
I have to take 2 minutes to say that I want. This is a community that has been devastated. I'm going back 6 months to the shootings that occurred, the unexplained shootings after that, the shootings in the Border Grill, the fires and the floods. It's just been a lot, and I've seen this community come together in just the most amazing ways. So I just want to commend the community for the efforts that you guys have put into really supporting each other. I've heard so many wonderful stories. But my selfishness is about myself, I have to tell you. I came to know the community of Malibu in 2009 when my intern went missing. Subsequently, she was found, here deceased in the canyon. But what kept me really tied to this community was the help and support that I got all these years. If I say my Teresa's name, people remember her. They remember her story. They continue to reach out. And it's like that kind of support that you get from a community that you're not even from. Well, see, now I feel like I'm from the community. And I actually know this community better than I know my own in many ways. So I know I will probably never get an opportunity to stand up and say thank you to the community of Malibu. So this is my official thank you for everything that you have done for myself and the friends of the community. Having said that, the grief that is going on in this community is overwhelming. And I haven't known CeCe very long, but I know her to be just this very go-getter, very strong woman, always on the go. I myself am a crybaby, and I've cried to her multiple times. But when she called me, and she was in tears about a young man who, I'm not sure if he was a young man, but a man who was living in his car and who had just no idea about what he was going to do, with himself. And just the sound in her voice, the desperation in her voice, and something that I had never heard in her voice before. That was just really let me know that we really, really, really need some mental health services in here in this community. I know that it's difficult because in the area, people are scrambling to see, is my home still here? What's missing? worried about neighbors, taking care of friends, taking care of and reaching out and then supporting each other. So I know that it's difficult to stop and take time to think about your mental health. But depression is real. Anxiety is real. And there are lots of services that are out there within and outside of the community that you need to just really try to avail yourself of those resources. Also, that to look around at your neighbor. So maybe their house has been saved, maybe their belongings are still there, but they may still be in shock about what happened. They may still have guilt because maybe their home survived, but their neighbor's friend, home didn't. Those who left may feel guilt because they left and they left someone behind. Those who stayed may feel guilty because, for lots of reasons, guilt is a big problem when we talk about devastations like this. The anxiety itself causes problems with sleep and appetite. People can't concentrate. People have difficulty going to work. Irritability. I have been on that Facebook page myself. Getting angry with one another, short tempers. It's all in the effort to make good choices and decisions for the community. But tensions are high, so tempers are high also. Sleep deprivation definitely is going to lead to anger and hostility. I don't know how many people are unemployed right now as a result of the fires. Some people may not have lost their home, but they lost their business. They don't know how they're going to pay their rent. There's a misperception that everybody in Malibu has money, and not everybody does. So therefore, there are organizations who don't think about reaching out and giving out to this community. And honestly, my nonprofit was one of them until CeCe set me straight on that. So we have divisions in the
What can I set you straight on?
On just the fact that not everybody has resources here. That there's such a misperception about the need in the community. I've definitely reached out to a lot of organizations and said, no, when it comes to donating, we have to think about all the community. Devastation is real, and it doesn't matter what city you live in. And when people are in need and they've lost everything, they need help, and they need help in any way that they can get it. And that includes mental health. I have some folders and brochures back there full of resources for mental health services, also for unemployment, how to collect unemployment. But something else that I think people don't think about. We think about, if we're not working, that we'll apply for unemployment. But some people, maybe they are able to go back to work because their work is still there, but they may not be in the mental state to be able to do it. So just to let you know that you can apply for disability if you're having anxiety and it's interfering with your ability to work. If you're having depression, if it's interfering with your ability to work. If your loved one is having issues and you need to stay home and care for them, then you can apply for disability. I'm happy to stay afterwards and help anybody with that process. I know that some of the mental health professionals in the area just aren't available right now because they're dealing with their own tragedy. I have my phone number here is available. Anybody who calls me, I can make sure that I get you the proper referrals. If you need help with your disability applications, therefore, I will definitely help you with that. But it's lots of referrals in that packet. The most important referral that you will find in that packet is a phone number, and it's 211. And it's really important because the 211 are social workers who will answer the phone, and they will help you with any area of need, including mental health needs. So if you need referral to to a therapist, it could be a low-cost therapist, or if you have insurance, they can refer you. Also, if you're homeless or you're dealing with someone who's homeless, any type of resource that you need is on that 211, and it's in that packet. Okay. So I want to quickly go through the signs of depression, quickly go through the signs of anxiety, and then talk about how to cope with that. So depression would include this: impairment in sleep, impairment in appetite, poor attention, poor concentration, thoughts of suicide, feelings of guilt, lack of interest in pleasurable things, poor energy, and basically some people can't even get out of bed. For the most part, depending on each other and relying on each other can be very helpful. A group like this, I've been hearing people sharing their stories with each other, is so therapeutic. So opportunities to share your stories with one another is important. And sharing and working with somebody individually might be necessary, so someone might need more professional help if it goes on for an extended amount of time. but also making sure that you're talking about it and processing it becomes really important. Signs of anxiety can include panic attacks, increased heart rate, sweaty palms, nervousness, again, lack of sleep, lack of appetite. So some of the symptoms of depression and anxiety kind of cross over with each other. And that's the immediate impact. So when we think about what happens up to 6 months down the line, then we might be thinking about post-traumatic stress disorder. So those people who either have had those symptoms for that long amount of time and they haven't gone away, definitely would need some professional intervention. But then also, so there could be that delayed kind of response for people, and that would need some more professional help. There's lots of groups and services, and like I said in the handbook, there's some resources in there. But then also, there are those people who today are still in a state of shock, and they may look perfectly fine. You may think absolutely nothing's wrong with them, and they will tell you that everything's fine. But then there will be one trigger on one day that just brings it all home for them and just reminds them of what happened to them. I think I was overhearing someone telling a story today about how they were perfectly fine until this one event occurred, and then all of a sudden they broke down. Thank you. Sorry. Sorry about that. So I just want to say, in the packet there's lots of information. I'm also happy to stay here and answer any questions. My phone number is available for anybody to call. You can contact me through Facebook. There's a lot of help out there with regards to mental health. Pay attention to yourself and your mental health, and pay attention to those around you to make sure that they get the help and services that they need.
So I guess my sweaty palms are normal at this moment.
Yeah.
All right. We have an attorney next, an advocate and an activist, Brianna Strange.
Yeah, I'm going to have Bobby speak. That should have been his introduction. I'm also an attorney, but he's...
Bobby's up next. Or maybe Brian's up next.
Or Brian?
It's up to you. Well, I will say one quick thing, which is I was on the ground at Point Dume Elementary for 3 days or 4 days maybe, I don't know.
Hey, David,
Can you stand up?
Hi everyone. So I was at Point Dume Elementary for how many days were we there? 4 days, and there was a guy who lives on Blue Water who brought us his bus to sleep in because we couldn't leave the
Barry.
class unattended.
That was Barry.
Just wanted to say thank you to Barry. Also, Kelly Jacobson couldn't be here today, but thank you to Kelly Jacobson and Lion Heron and Sam McGee and all these guys who are, don't want to be in the spotlight and have to go back to work and went straight back to their jobs after this, after dealing with what was a pretty traumatic experience. So I just want to say thank you to all those people, and Dane and Jessica and Keegan, and yeah, it was scary. But the most important thing, I think, is something that was just mentioned. Knowing your neighbor is really, really valuable in a situation like this. We had a lot of people coming up to the gas desk asking us to do house calls and go check on people because their elderly neighbor was, left in a house. So I think just knowing the people around you and knowing who might not be able to get out or who might need help is really, really important. All right, thanks.
Hi, I'm the other attorney in the family. Anyway, I wanted to cover 3 points today. One, how you can get help if you're uninsured, what to do when you're insured, and what to do with uninsured losses. The first point with respect to if you have no insurance, I think that the best resource in Malibu is the Boys and Girls Club. They have an emergency relief organization that they formed, and then there's also the Malibu Foundation. The Boys and Girls Club takes applications. They've already given away about $300,000. This is not for rebuilding, it's for emergency funds for people that need housing and food and transportation. There's 3 tiers that they have, so it's readily available money up to $7,500 per applicant. So I would encourage anybody that has friends or needs money to apply through them. It's on the website for the Boys and Girls Club. The Malibu Foundation that did the One Love raising money has given money to the Boys and Girls Club for them to administer. The Malibu Foundation is helping organize communities like Seminole Springs to give them a better voice. So that's an uninsured issue. There's also FEMA, which has its own limitations, but it's basically a federal agency that allows you to apply. You can do that online. If you need assistance, you can contact the Boys and Girls Club that will help you with that too. So that's a basic uninsured issue. For people with insurance, there's a few issues I wanted to cover. First of all, and some of this is pretty elementary, but I just want to mention it anyway. People have a declaration page that talks about their policy limits. That's not the policy itself. The policy itself is a written legal document. Most of the policies actually have the same wording, but if you don't have your policy itself, ask your agent for your policy. And on the policy insurance itself, there's coverage. A lot of people need immediate coverage for their loss of use. The insurance companies interpret the policy different depending on the insurance company, even though it's the same language. So you have an issue of habitability. Is your house habitable? I actually had an argument with my insurance company. How dare them? They say, it's habitable even if it's livable. If you weren't burned, it's still habitable. That's not true. It's when you have ash and soot around your house and don't want to expose your family to it, that is not habitable. And you have a perfectly fine argument to get up to your policy limits for loss of use. And if you're having a fight with your carrier and they're not being reasonable, ask them to assign a new claims rep. That's sometimes effective because different claims rep handle it differently. I would go that route. And then finally, an insurance company has in California what's called an obligation to act in good faith. And if they're really acting unreasonable, they can be liable for treble damages the way they're treating you as an insured. So I would make sure you're being treated fairly, is the bottom line on that. There's also coverage, obviously, for contents. There's coverage for cleaning up debris, and then there's the rebuilding coverage. That can depend on whether you have coverage for replacement cost or the amount of coverage for your property damage. Depends on the terms of your policy. So look at that. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then with respect to some of the insurance, it should be fairly easy to have them just pay off your limits depending on your state of loss. So that brings me to uninsured losses. Communities that have been affected by devastation like this, for example, in the BP oil spill, the loss of economic opportunity happens not just for 5 months, it happens for 18 months, for 24 months. So a lot of the uninsured losses will be, for example, if you're running a business out of your home, you're going to lose income for the next year and a half. Those are demonstrable losses. It may not be covered by insurance, but as you probably know, there are lawsuits being prepared and analyzed against entities who we think are responsible for causing the fire. And I would not be shy about trying to get compensated for what you're entitled to by those people responsible for the fire. That's a whole different issue I'm not going to get into. I'm just trying to give some general help on economic losses. With respect to health concerns, and there is some big health concerns, I'd like to turn it over to Robert Kennedy, who has some
health concerns. First of all, excuse my voice, which is really bad today. It's always bad, but it's really bad today. In terms of health concerns, there's always health concerns when you're exposed to smoke inhalation. They're worse when it's chronic than acute. So if you're on a boat and you're only exposed for 10 minutes, it's a different kind of exposure than if you were out there for 3 days fighting the fire. The major source of injury, the major source of concern is microparticulates, and particularly in areas where there are homes, and there's insulations, there's other sources of toxics. You get microparticulates, and the most dangerous of those, in terms of, for example, the history in the World Trade Center collapse, and I lost my law office in that collapse. My partner was badly injured by it in a very chronic way. The microparticulates of most concerns are usually heavy metals, and we, in any kind of settled area, you're gonna see in the smoke a lot of heavy metals. There's an additional concern with this fire because of the source of the fire, and we've actually had a team up at, we were the first team, the only team that's been up to the fire site that's a non-governmental organization, and probably most of you know that the fire started not in Woolsey Canyon, but on the Rocketdyne property, and it started because of we believe, and all the evidence points to this, because of a guide wire, which is the wire that holds the the transmission line up, and was too close to a jump wire, which is a live wire that attaches to transmission wires, and that in the 40-mile-an-hour wind, the guide wire made contact with the jump wire made contact with the guide wire and sparked, and that's almost certainly what caused the initial ignition. The area is an area of concern, as most of you know. It was a site, there were 10 nuclear reactors built at that site. It was probably the worst nuclear meltdown in the history of this country in 1959, July 1959. On that site, it was a nuclear meltdown that was kept secret for 20 years by DOE and the Atomic Energy Commission and by Rocketdyne. And then there were 2 additional, and incidentally, the amount of radiation that was released at that time was about 240 times the amount of radiation that was released by the Indian Point Power Plant during its meltdown. So this was probably arguably the most catastrophic meltdown in American history, and one of the worst in the history of the world. There were 2 additional meltdowns, big nuclear accidents there again that were kept secret in the 1960s. In addition to that, Rocketdyne was testing military missiles there. Were 10,000 military tests, and there's a lot of components or constituents of those kind of ignitions that remain on the site and that are highly toxic. The polyaromatic hydrocarbons, PCBs, a lot of dioxin, radionuclides, and tetrachloroethylene, which they use as a degreaser in the missiles and in their tanks. And there's approximately 18 tons of toxic waste per acre on that site. It's 22,850 acres site. And Boeing has used, I have to say this, its political clout to avoid a cleanup. So the California Toxic Substance Control Agency, which is a captive agency, has allowed Boeing to experiment with a cleanup of what they call a phyto cleanup, which means that plants were planted on the site to take up the radionuclides and all these other toxins. All of those plants were burned, about 85% of the plants. So those kind of toxins would have been suspended in the burn. Do we know what the impacts are of that on Malibu? We don't at this time, and that's something that we're investigating. People who have health facts, you should keep records of them. You should see a doctor if you have any health impacts. and we can recommend you ways of getting tested if that's something that you want to do.
Today is also the kickoff of CeCe's and ours new website, Malibu90265.org. And that website is going to be a resource for the community. All the information you're hearing here, all the numbers that you're hearing here are going to be posted on that. And if you have things that you'd like to put up there for the citizens of Malibu, please feel free, because we'd love to have the information. Again, it's a resource-based website. It's for you as the people of Malibu to help you survive and help you thrive and get through this together. All right, next up, I have a documentarian, a local, and someone who's helping to do an investigation of how the fire was dealt with. I'd like to introduce you to Paul Taublieb.
I'm a filmmaker. I was a journalist for a long time, and I'm sort of dusting off those skills and trying to talk to as many people as possible. And I'm having a lot of cooperation from fire and from some of the people at the city. Clearly, some things didn't happen correctly. And it's important that, in the story that I hope to do, which is for CeCe, and I want to thank her for giving me a platform and a place to try to gather the facts. And that's what I'm still in the process of doing. I can say, though, it's been really eye-opening to talk to people and realize how many moving parts were involved and how the things that went wrong, and clearly things went wrong, I don't believe it was out of malfeasance or out of intention, it was just out of chaos, which doesn't justify anything, but it means it needs to be looked at in a way that we can make positive changes for the future. But there were problems. I will say one of the problems is an individual who has been a lightning rod, which is the city manager. And I think part of the indication of that is I've left half a dozen messages for her, emails and phone calls, and I don't know anything about city government, I've never really done this, but the way a city government works is the council members are like the board of directors, and then the people who work at the city execute what the board of directors tell them to do. And the CEO of the city is a woman named Reva Feldman, and she refuses to speak to me anyways. And I think that's an important factor that for me to get to the bottom of the story and not just everybody's version of it, she's a critical person to speak. And I hope I'm able to, that maybe this forum will encourage her to reach back out to me. I will say in my investigation, there's a lot of questions about Pepperdine and the allocation of resources. I'm not at the point now where I'm going to state anything, but I do believe there are some serious questions about how resources were allocated and what didn't happen in Point Dume and Malibu. And then on the other side of the coin, though, I was one of the people who stayed behind, and it was kind of, exciting, and we fought the fire. But one of the people I spoke to was the chief of police, fire chief, and he kind of said, "Look, if you want to be safe, leave. Like, it's not a mystery how to be safe. Just go." Now, there was certainly a big problem with the evacuation plan, and that's something that has to be looked at, and everybody acknowledges it. But he also pointed out how lucky the people who stayed behind were, because it could have really, really been worse. We didn't know what we were doing. We're not firemen. We don't have plans. We didn't really have evacuation. We're wearing, we just heard, I was wearing masks that were left behind by the painter. I thought that was great. I had no idea how to protect myself and what to think about. And next time, we all know a lot more people are going to stay. And just as a sort of a semi-aside, the words mandatory evacuation, they have no legal meaning. You do not have to leave. More people are going to stay. It's not a legal term. It's like an encouragement. It may have some implications in terms of liability, but you cannot be arrested. The police cannot say, "We're locking you up and taking you away if you want to stay at your home." But if you do stay, and next time I probably will, and this is what this fire chief said, not only are you risking your life if you make that choice, probably not being a skilled fire person, like I'm not, but there's a fireman who may come to rescue you, and he might lose his life saving you. And you may lose your life, or your neighbor may be trying to help you. So if we're going to stay, we need to be prepared. We need to have an understanding. It needs to be done in a way that makes sense. Or maybe not staying is really not such a bad idea, but you need to do it with an awareness of that decision, that it really has big implications, and that it worked out this time, and we all stayed because Point Dume never burns. What's there to worry about? But we were very, very lucky, and the people on the highway were very, very lucky. That could have been a disaster. So I just want to thank CeCe again. I'm going to write everything up. I hope to continue to talk to people and then share as much information as possible.
You know, Paul really touched on a very important part, which is having the proper gear, PPE, personal protection equipment. And I was on the fire lines for 4 days out here, and I saw a lot of people who did not have the proper equipment on. And you're opening yourself up to get hurt. So if you choose to stay, at least do it with the right equipment to indemnify yourself and to help yourself. I really urge you. When I went through the CERT training at the city, one of the things we talked about was wildland fire. And having wildland fire is driven by topography, it's driven by a lot of different factors. But the one thing that we did learn in training is you had to have the right gear. So after this meeting or at the end, if you have questions, I have resources, I have people I can hook you up with to get the right gear, all right? So it's really important. Next speaker is going to be Keegan. Keegan?
Hi everybody, my name's Keegan Gibbs from Point Dume. Our family's house burned down Friday night. I spoke a little bit at City Council on Tuesday, and I got a little bit of flack for saying the words that we stand behind the City Council. I want to clear that up. We do stand behind the City Council because that is who we elected. And our community needs to figure out a way to work together, not just here in this forum and a new website, whatever the entities are that we form, but we need to figure out a way to work with our government better. I want to say one other thing too is my I guess approach to this whole thing post-fire has been trying to look at the silver lining of this whole thing. And I can't encourage everybody more to please continue this sense of community much longer than just the recovery process. Like Brianna said, getting to know your neighbors, getting to understand your area better, getting people's contact information, it's extremely important. And outside of just disaster, it's important to help this community heal. Another really important thing that I encourage is for people to become more prepared. Like Paul was saying, I know in the future that nobody I know is probably going to leave. But I do encourage everybody to go through CERT training, go through basic fire training, wildland training, get the proper gear, make sure you're not wearing flammable materials. In Sam's case, probably not wearing shorts and a short sleeve shirt.
Or a shirt at all?
Yeah, or a shirt at all. Yeah, so I just want to say that I think Malibu over the last 15, 20 years or so there's been a division that has continued to grow, I think, between what some people say is the old Malibu and some people say is the new Malibu. A affluent community or blue-collar community. We all saw that division completely disintegrate in the face of fire. And I really encourage everybody to continue that unity across those economic, social barriers. And I hope we don't see a disaster like this, but when we do again, that is going to be single-handedly the most important aspect of dealing with that disaster again, is going to be that community and that communication. So yeah, I encourage everybody to stop pointing fingers and let's continue to keep coming together. That's it.
Thank you very much. You know, you touched on a key word there, community. We are a community. We're a community strong of 13,000 full-time residents. We get about 500,000 of our closest friends come summertime on a weekend. You know, I'd like everybody to turn to their neighbor and introduce yourself, so that everybody can say hello to somebody new. Thank you very much. All right. Can I have your attention, please? Okay. Since everybody takes directions so well, on your way out, you can hand me a $100 bill. All right. So again, keeping with the tradition of community. Whatever your religious affiliation is or non-affiliation, you're of the affiliation of Malibu. And Malibu is a very special place. I had the privilege of raising my children here. I've had the scary part of living through 4 different fires here. You know, we got that big blue thing out there. We never know what it's going to do. But Malibu as a whole is a lot of different neighborhoods. A lot of different components. You've got the east side, you've got central, you've got the north end, the west side. You've got the canyons, you've got the unincorporated part. But we're all one community. And if we can all reach out together to help our neighbors and to help people. If we can all help our neighbors recover, this is a team effort. And I know, as it was touched on earlier, that there's litigation issues, there's liability issues and everything else. But as a community as a whole, the energy that I saw the other night at City Council was amazing. I served almost 10 years in public safety. We were lucky to get 2 speakers on a regular basis. And Lieutenant Royal sat with me for those years. That dynamic cannot change. We have created a spark. The spark is the fire. The spark is what happened during the fire. But now we have to take that fire and spark and kindle it and change our community for the better. Change our community for the better. And remember, the city council members, they work for you. You voted them in. It's up to you as the public to let your city council member know how you are feeling. Okay? The mayor has asked, call him. Take him up on his offer. He wants to hear what you have to say. Let your elected officials hear what you're feeling. Hear your pain. Because if they don't hear it from us on a regular basis, nothing is going to change. And if we go back to the way it was, well, what's going to happen with the next event? Or the event after that? Or what happens if we have an earthquake next week? You know, we live in earthquake country. We talk about fire, but our next biggest problem is probably going to be an earthquake. Does everybody have supplies at their house? Are they prepared? Do you have water? Do you have food? I mean, we call this the yo-yo fire. You're on your own. And that's a little joke that's going around. But the reality is you're on your own. Big Brother's not going to be there for you because they have to deal with the overall picture. And it's not a knock on fire. It's not a knock on sheriff. It is the reality. So if you choose to stay and you're going to be a member of this community, I suggest you start looking at emergency supplies, shelters, and things of that nature. All right, enough of that. Let's hear from Dane Skophammer.
Thanks, guys, for putting this on. Happy to be here. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And I just kind of wanted to say a couple of things about what I'm looking at going forward, what we're all looking at as a community. I think the biggest problem that we've got is that we've got an erosion of public faith in our public entities, right? Our city council, our sheriff's department, the LAPD, anybody who was here felt some of the burn from that. Nobody had good experiences with any of those groups. And like Keegan has said and like Paul has said, almost everybody that left during the fire wishes that they were here to save their own property, to be there for their neighbors, to be involved with the relief effort that happened, or just to feel the community that wasn't here. Now that's all true, and what everybody said, that all sounds great. But the reality is when this happens next time, and everybody decides to stay, we're going to be in a situation like Paul said, where there are lots of unprepared people who didn't know what they were doing, who are putting people in jeopardy by being there. So my opinion of what we need as a community is some institution that we can trust, which right now certainly is not the city government or any of the other the institutions that were supposed to be there for us. I mean, I know that nobody that I spoke to saw a fire truck. Nobody saw sheriff's vehicles except for keeping them out of their homes. I think the point is that the most effective way for we as a community to keep our community members safe is to give them something that they can trust. And right now, they're only going to trust their neighbors, the people that were there for them during the last fire, the people that were there for their homes, the people that were there to support each other. And I think that what I'm advocating for is a unified group of emergency responders for West Malibu, right? Like an organized and effective West Malibu emergency response. And I believe that we can use this community of this feeling of community and take it the steps further that we've all been sort of talking about right now. It's here. We just need to bring it all together, decide that this is something that we want, and move forward with it. Now, I know that there are already community response teams like CERT, and I'm not trying to say that CERT isn't a good idea, because I believe that it probably is. But I think that in a situation like this, like a you're on your own sort of situation, the best way for people to stay alive is to leave. The only way they're going to leave is if they know that people will be behind to take care of their property. The people that can will. The people that can't or shouldn't can leave. They're unsafe or they feel unsafe should go. And a well-funded, well-organized, effective group of community citizens is what West Malibu needs. And I think that we should do everything we can to get that together. Not without intentionally placing blame on anybody, only that we know that we're going to be on our own. We've been on our own several times in the past, and I think that it would mean a lot to get that going. So, thanks.
I want to remind everybody we've got a couple more speakers and then we're going to open it up. I know everybody's got questions and I appreciate your patience, but I do have to give these people their due, and they have a lot of important things that need to be said. One of the things we discussed with this new website, just so everybody's aware, is neighborhood town councils. Each neighborhood, whether it's Big Rock, whether it's Corral, whether it's whatever neighborhood, they have a couple of representatives, and we all get together on a weekly or a monthly basis and discuss issues specific to your neighborhood. And the crime and safety task force that I'm heading takes that information and relays it to council, relays it directly to our representatives from the sheriff's department. So one of the things we're doing is empowering the local citizens within their groups. So one of the things you're going to see on our website is we're going to look for people who want to be committee members from their location. And it's really important that you spend the time here. We'd like to continue this forward. And then we will bring those issues to council. Because we're going to go to council as a group representing large tracts of their voters. So we have a little bit of clout. That's really important. All right. Next speaker is an assistant coach of mine. He's a great baseball player, Lester Tobias.
T-ball champs. Thank you, Danny Tartable. Okay, so my name's Lester Tobias. I'm one of the architects that lives and works out here and has been fighting the planning department for 25 years. In 2013, I wrote a book called Building in the Navigating the Malibu Zoning Code. Bestseller. So there's another local architect in town, Doug Burge, and the two of us have kind of become the default tip of the spear in terms of figuring out how we're all going to get our houses in our town rebuilt. I do want to say that this is my fourth disaster rebuild: the '93 fire, the Northridge earthquake, and the 2007 Corral Canyon fire. So it's not my first rodeo, and I know the problems, and so does Doug. So I'm just going to really quickly tell you guys what we're up to. We're easy to get a hold of. We need your help, okay? I think that one of the things that Chief Villanueva said that kind of perked me up was he used two words: clean house, okay? If the hired guns that are approving these plans and reviewing these plans and ultimately letting us rebuild aren't going to get out of the way, we need our city council to get them out of the way. It's that simple. So I'm going to touch on a few bullet points that Doug and I are going to be pushing very hard for. I really need you guys to start banging on the city council, to bang on the city manager, to bang on the planning director to make this happen. And I guarantee you, if you don't, you will never get back in your house. And I'm going to tell you why. Okay, first thing we have to do is we have to separate and privatize this process. Our planning staff is as full as they can get. They're as busy as they can get. They can't do any more work, but I'm telling you, they don't want to let go of the work. Okay? They like being in control. We've got to wrest that control from them. We have to hire California Code Check, who we've been using for years to do our building plan checks. We got to land trailers up at City Hall. We got to put those guys in there, and we have to let them run the process. Okay? We're going to need leniency in this planning approval process. If your house is an older house like mine, I guarantee you, if you look at the tax assessor's rolls, it says you've got probably 25% smaller of a house than you actually have. Okay? We got to make sure that we get to rebuild what we had, not what the assessor said we had, not what the sketchy permit records say we had. So we're going to be fighting for that, and you guys need to fight for that. These were your houses. You bought them. Maybe you did a little work on them. But that's not your fault. That's the fault of the city for never getting a good permit process together. All right, we want to create a professional citizen zoning board to kind of guide this thing, just to make sure we're at the table when these decisions are being made. Just a couple of procedural things. We want all these reviews to be in person, face-to-face, over a counter with a reviewer. We do not want these guys to take in the plan, okay? They take in the plan, you're not going to hear from them for weeks, maybe a month, and when you do, it's going to be in the form of a bullshit incomplete letter. It says, oh, your north arrow isn't pointed right. There, I've done my job. The clock starts over. It's now your fault that you don't have a permit. So you got to be careful about that kind of stuff. We need an ombudsman office to help shepherd these things through. We need to remove grading and drainage reviews from Public Works. They have no business holding up our projects for weeks, months at a time, reviewing on-site grading. They're Public Works. They do the public projects. We want California Code Check to do that. We want to make sure that we can submit our plans. You can submit your plans simultaneously to the building department and the planning department. This is called concurrent submittal. And it scares the crap out of the planning department, and I don't know why, because every other city in the world lets you do it. We need to get a foundation grading only permit process rolling so that you can get your foundations in the ground, you can get your grading going. And we need a single entity that takes all these various agencies, individual stamps on your plans. Like you're going to end up with like 7 different agencies looking at your plans and saying, okay, this is good to go. We need one guy that takes those 8 plans and says, yeah, that's the same plan. The 6 agencies have approved it. I'm giving one stamp instead of running around having your architect or your expediter or you guys running around to 8 agencies with one set of plans and having to get them to put the final plan on. That's something government, one of the few things they might be able to do well, they can do that. The other thing is, we're working on an online submittal process, and we need to get multiple trailers on sites immediately, none of just like one 20-foot trailer once you get a building permit. So, that's about it. I'm here. Thanks.
Thank you, Lester. Okay, we've got 2 more speakers, then we're going to open it up. Thank you for your patience. Our next speaker is a local hero who saved his home. I was there with him at the end. I saw him, and I saw videos, and he did it himself. And I'd like to. He's also a longtime member of the LA County Arson Watch. Kirby, Kotler, please.
I wasn't really prepared to speak today, but I do want to let everyone know in this room, could you raise your hands who lost their home in fire? Wow. So take a look around. You guys, it's not a big O. This is like a small number. Each one of you raising your hand knows at least 20 more people that lost their home. If nothing gets said here today, I implore you to listen to the gentleman you just spoke to, Lester. I build houses here in Malibu. I sell real estate here. I've been here since 1961. My family since 1947. This is not going to be an easy process, and they will steamroll you if you do not stand up for your rights. Every single thing he said is 100% right. I went through this disaster. I've gone through many more in the past. My whole life, I've been fighting fires for 35 years. The only bigger tragedy that could happen in front of us right now, besides what we just got through, is this one he's talking about right now. You guys need to be back in your homes. You need to get your kids back into school. You need to find a sense of normalcy. We are all going to be calling you. I might like this right now. Now it's like the fire didn't feel like this, but it's heavy. We are all suffering, and we are all going to heal as a community. And it's going to take all of us standing up and taking care of our neighbors. That's how it was in the 2 weeks I was on the front line. And I look at the faces out here and I just remember each one of you at certain times doing certain things. I'm not the hero. You guys are the hero. But together as a community, that's how we're going to make this thing work, you guys. And I just, I know it's easy because we're all in our shit right now. It's heavy. I mean, we're all trying to deal with insurance companies. We're dealing with our loss. We're dealing with our kids. Some didn't make it. Some did make it. But, you know, we need to work with the people that are behind us, even if we feel it's not working the way we'd like it to. My name's Kirby. Thank you very much for taking a stand for our community. Really opportunity to speak also with a chief who also is standing up for us. And my only suggestion to the city council is to recognize that what happened here is very clear. It's a serious, serious breakdown. We're broken. It did not work. Almost on any level, it did not work. The sheriff's standing up. The chief is standing up. The city needs to acknowledge it was a screw-up. It failed. It just did. It was good or bad. We need to step up and just see how it failed so we can learn from it. Because if we don't, it's just going to repeat itself. And I keep flashing back to lifeguard headquarters, to Point Dume. These guys, these young bucks that are stepping up in my shoes, and I heard my families talking about the fires of the late 40s and 50s, and now I'm telling my kids about it. It's crazy. This isn't going to change, guys. This is it. This is our world. It's not going to change. Fires aren't going to get smaller. They're not going to get more controlled. You're going to have to take action. If you don't think you should be here during a fire, get out. Do not make it more difficult for the gentlemen behind us, the sheriffs, the firefighters, the first responders. Grab a shovel, jump in, join Arson Watch, join CERT. You know, my wife and I did CERT the first year it came out. I've been doing Arson Watch for 26 years. guys, jump in. This is our community. No one's going to jump in for you. It's us. And if we're lucky, at certain times, we're going to get an airdrop. We're going to get a fire truck rolling up. You can't count on it anymore. So I stand committed to everyone here in this room and all the ones that aren't here. Anything I can do to help, you know. Chris Cortaz and I are working to try and find housing for everybody. I got friends of mine that are in the construction world that are totally willing to give people straight deals and not rip people off. Watch out for the thieves, guys. They are out there, man. If you think you see it, report it. Because it's going to be hard. There's not enough contractors in this town that are going to save all the people who lost houses. It's impossible, guys. Do the math. So we just got to all stick together, and I stand committed to all you guys. Any way I can help. David, thank you for jumping in and for asking me to be a part of something. I'm not sure what it is yet, but, but I'm here. So thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I'm CeCe Woods. I've been just I'm not good at speaking, so I'm a little nervous right now, but, which most people would never think of. The goal of the website is to bring all of you together, and that is neighborhood by neighborhood. We want to have 2 to 3 individuals from each neighborhood who can report back to us and tell us, you know, what's going on in your neighborhood, how can you help the other neighborhoods if they need help, and to have a platform where vetted information is uploaded that we can trust. Not 12 million Facebook posts, not rants, you know, here and there. And I know I'm guilty of some of those rants, but that's my personality. But anyway. So we wanted to put Malibu 90265 together so that we could bring all of you together, get emergency preparedness like really organized and have people who know what they're doing, who can communicate directly with the authorities, work with the authorities, have communication with the authorities, which I know the first day of the fire, we got thrown our press passes, and thankfully I have a really great relationship with LASD. And but what we learned that first morning was only press and first responders were getting through, as in fire and the Sheriff's Department and CHP. So all of a sudden we had to get together and start bringing in disaster supplies, and we became responsible for something we didn't realize we were going to become responsible for. Going forward, we want to put teams that actually are able to get through these barricades, the disaster teams that are supposed to. I personally am going to make sure that I coordinate that myself from the county side. City side is not my deal. I mean, I do live on Point Dume, but I'm going to reach out as a member of Malibu 90265, the county part, which allows me to do that because I don't have to go through the red tape of City Hall. I can literally work straight with LASD, the fire department, as can David Saul and members of our Malibu Civilian Crime and Safety Task Force. So we're taking this really seriously. That's why we brought you all here today, to let you know that this platform is going to be uploaded with all the information and then some. We want to hear from every one of you what information you want uploaded, and we want to be that place that you trust, that you can go to and know the information on there is going to help you, and it's going to help all of us get through the next disaster. So that's it. Right.
And that's from a woman who doesn't like public speaking. I think you did a good job. All right, I'm going to introduce a local doctor, a local activist who knows me inside and out, and that is not a pun. Sabine, come up here, please. Sabine.
By the way, David, so much for HIPAA, right? Yeah. So he said it, not me. Yeah. So I'm here. I'm not an activist. I don't know how I became an activist. Probably on Facebook because I went a little bit nuts trying to, sound the alarm. So they say announce and I'm going to have to read my cell phone because I put a lot of important information, and I think it needs to be heard because I was there for 3 days, back and forth, bringing supplies. I saw it all. I started tape recording with my phone, like I was a news reporter. Don't know why I did that, but it just came to me. They say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of gold. And that's certainly not what we saw during the Woolsey fire. Because, and again, I'm not here to blame anybody. I'm here to show the mistakes so that we don't repeat them. There was no prevention. There was no prevention because very few people were wearing masks. And not just regular painter's masks, N95 masks. From the firemen were not wearing the mask, to the cops that stopped me, to the media that was allowed, they were not wearing the mask. And I'm gonna say why it's so important later about the mask. Second, very few people were wearing eye protective wear. You're in the middle of a fire that's burning 360 degrees. You have no protection of your airway or your eyes or your skin. Very few people were wearing body wear. So, and again, from all the people that I saw, very few people had that. So that's when I became on alert and said, my God, these people are there in the fires. They're trying to save their homes. The policemen are trying to protect them and evacuate. The firemen are trying to hose down these houses, and nobody is equipped. So to this day, the areas, there is still no prevention. The burned areas are not contained. And by contained, I don't mean the little yellow tape. I think it needs to be serious containments, I'm sorry. So businesses restarted, restaurants are open. We have all these cindered, burned houses all over the community, especially around Malibu High School. And hikers, the trails are burnt to a crisp. The wildlife is completely dead. And there are still hikers going up these trails. Well, they need to be told that this is an infected area. They need to have a park ranger at every neighborhood that opens to the trail that basically says, stop, you're going in there, you're risking your life, okay? Or basically, you want to risk your life? Here, sign a waiver. We have a bunch of lawyers here, right? They need a waiver if they want to go into these hikes. So, there, I lost my phone. Okay. Kids are supposed to go back to Malibu High School. I was at the city council meeting and there was a gentleman that talked, and he was right on the money. Kids are supposed to go back to high school. We've exposed these kids to PCBs. And the PCB is completely in the open because it is not contained. They're going back to school in construction with all these PCBs and toxins that we think are the cause of cancer. Now, on top of that, they have the toxins from the fire. And on top of that, they have rodent infestation. Now, I'm sure all of you have left your homes for about 3 weeks. I came to my house with major rodent infestation. And the risk of that is a condition called leptospirosis, which is basically a condition that you breathe in the urine and the feces. I don't mean to be disgusting, but this is a reality, and it gets into your lungs, and it can cause a condition called leptospirosis. These are serious things that need to be looked at when you're considering putting the kids back to school. And so that's why I'm kind of here to talk about the risk. So the risk, of course, we know, mesothelioma, cancer, radiation exposure, leptospirosis, valley fever, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about valley fever. So they evacuated everyone, but allowed the press, the firemen, and the cops, and sadly, unequipped. So my observation that I saw from the beginning is, and I'm the first one to respect the cops when they give me a ticket for speeding. I write it right away. So I'm wrong. And I'm the first one to respect the firemen because if they tell me to evacuate, I'm the first one to evacuate. However, there are other people that chose to stay for whatever reason. It's called freedom of choice, right? We have the right, the freedom to choose to stay or not stay. These people needed help. When I went in and I wasn't allowed to go in, it was a little bit upsetting and a little bit maddening because what I realized is, my God, these people are left. They chose to stay. Now, because I respect everybody, I respect the local authorities, I respect the city, I respect the firemen, I respect the policemen. But we have to respect the individual that chose to stay. In the hospital, when people come to the hospital and they're Jehovah's Witness, I don't look at them and say, you know what, you need the blood to save your life. I say, you need the blood, you don't want it, but I'm still gonna try to help you. I'm still gonna try to do everything in my power to make your time in the hospital pleasant and to try to heal the suffering. This didn't happen. There was a complete push and blockage to stop the medical supply, to stop the supplies. And you know, it's interesting because the risk of the fires, when you look at it, and for everybody, from the firemen to the cops to everybody, dizziness, dehydration, lung disorder, bleeding disorder, skin infection, GI issues, cardiac issues, psychiatric issues, cancer, mesothelioma, autoimmune disorder, valley fever. I looked at the Oxnard disaster plan yesterday, as I was kind of saying, what am I going to talk about? And it says in bold letters, disaster code, personnel involved in a fire, police, firemen, medical. Where was medical? Nowhere. Didn't they think that doctors, nurses could help firemen with skin infections? Local who stayed, dizziness, red eyes, infections. Local who drank the water because there was no water and got diarrhea. The common answer for everybody was basically you need to evacuate. But these people chose to stay, therefore they exerted their right to stay, freedom of choice. Now that right entitles them to privileges, much like the Jehovah's Witness in the hospital, like delivery of supplies. And when I talk about supplies, I'm not talking about a generator or pump. I'm talking about clean water. Their water was shut down. Some were so thirsty they drank the water and then called me, texted me, I have diarrhea for 3 days, what am I doing? I'm talking about masks to stop respiratory issues. I'm talking about bandages, antibiotic creams. We had a lot of infections during the fire. Eyewear, skinwear, food. Those rights were stopped, blocked. It was like the French Revolution trying to bring in supplies. And that's not okay. And so I kind of, went on this rampage to stop all this. So now I'm going to talk about valley fever for a short moment. Valley fever, so I've been through, last year I was through the St. Thomas fire in Ventura, and my office was smoking. We were involved in that fire. And then this year, this Malibu fire, and I have to say, we were a little bit more prepared in Ventura. And sadly, and we were not prepared here. Valley fever is a fungus. It's coccidiomycosis is the fungus. It basically is a fungus whose spores start heating up in the earth on the soil, and then you breathe it in. It's not contagious from person to person, but it is something you breathe in. So it's very important to wear the right mask. So when I came for supplies the first day, and I noticed everybody from the firemen to the policemen to the media not wearing the protective mask, I went a little bit nuts. So the symptoms of valley fever, just so you know for anybody, sometimes there's no symptoms, sometimes it occurs 2 weeks up to 6 weeks to months after the fire. Fatigue, I don't want to scare anybody, it is rare, but if you have these symptoms, fatigue, joint pain, chest pain, please go see a doctor to at least get diagnosed and tell them you were in a fire. Other reasons to wear a mask: COPD exacerbation, asthma, cardiac exacerbation, GI infections, radiation, metal toxicity. Now I'm going to just talk a little bit about solutions because I'm a pragmatic kind of girl and I don't step into the limelight just to step into the limelight. In fact, I hate this camera that's videotaping right now. So, and I'm not running for Congress. I have no agenda, none whatsoever. I'm only here to find solutions because I like solutions. A new emergency plan that includes doctors and nurses. Mask for personnel still exposed to the cinders. Every worker that is, people came to remediation at my house and they gave me this huge bill, but none of the workers were wearing masks. Unacceptable. Provide security to all the neighborhoods that have access to hikes. It's a park. A park needs rangers. And people need to sign a waiver should they wish to endanger themselves to go through these hikes. Make sure all the restaurants and places that provide business have been remediated from the smokes and the fire. Increase awareness of the risk of fires to the locals so the next time they are equipped. Make sure every home, and I really mean that, I think the #1 plan from the city is to ensure that every home has a non-rebreather mask, a pool pump, a huge fire extinguisher. That needs to be mandatory before you even turn in the key or get your permit for your house. Hire those who deal with disasters to train the city. 9/11, I saw Mayor Giuliani was a master. And 9/11 was not predicted. Fires are common occurrence. As soon as the wind blows, the city needs to be on high alert. And by high alert, I'm not just saying high alert on Facebook. I'm saying prepare the city. Make sure that brush is cleared. Make sure that everyone is ready. Instead of the chili cook-off, or in addition to the chili cook-off, maybe have a fire fair. Train the kids how to survive a fire. Educate the parents. Educate the people that want to stay on how to be ready. CERT certification training before the fire, not after. Make sure every fireman, cop, news, local wears a mask. Make sure every fireman takes a wrench to shut off the gas. There were 3 firemen that went to 3 different homes. They didn't have the proper tool to shut off the gas. That's like a doctor not having a stethoscope. I'm sorry, that's priority. Make sure every neighborhood has a fire truck, and I think that's something that needs to be worked on in the future. Make sure the neighborhood has a contact person to talk to make sure, because leaving it all to, hey, let's blast it on our phones that don't work, or blast it on our cell phone when we don't have Wi-Fi is not appropriate. We also need to make sure that there's that person is responsible to tell the firemen where the homes are. Half the firemen, I went up to one and I said, hey, there's a house burning on 6300 Ramirez, and if that house burns, the whole neighborhood burns. And he's like, where's 6300 Ramirez? Can you show, oh, my cell phone doesn't work. I'm like, where are you from? He was like, from 3 hours ago, away. So I appreciate him being there, but somebody should have been there to guide him to where 6300 Ramirez was. The last thing I'm going to say is, let's consider putting the kids from Malibu High School somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because these kids are our future. And I do not want them coming to me or any doctor with mesothelioma, cancer, or any other thing. We have to think, we have to be proactive now. I know I can be a bit dramatic. And what I say is inconvenient for a lot of people. It's much easier to live in Fantasy Island in Malibu than the reality. But understanding the reality is what allows us to live longer. And ultimately, for those of you who know me, you know that I have no agenda except the healthcare of this community that I love. And it's not the community that's, you know, the stars and everything. It's the real people. It's the firemen. It's the teachers that I saw on the beach. So thank you very much, and David.
Our last but not least speaker is Jessica Steindorff. Jessica.
I wanted to give a shout out to Kelly Jacobson and Sam McGee first off, and they were our serious local heroes, and pretty much were absolutely amazing. The first 4 days when I was rescuing animals.
We can't hear you.
You have to really. Hello?
There you go.
Yes.
Hold it close.
The first 4 days when I was rescuing animals, I was texting Kelly Jacobson, and he was making welfare checks for me from people that were reaching out on social media. My dad's up in the canyon, up near Buena. He was eating fish sticks that thawed out like 4 days prior. We had another 80-year-old woman who was eating crackers because her kids brought her food every day and they were blocked from getting in. So these guys that were on the ground here were absolutely amazing, and I consider them my heroes. I want to talk about the evacuation plan because I live on a ranch in Malibu. Can you hear me? I live on a ranch in Malibu, and from 1 a.m. to about 5 a.m. that Thursday, I was taking in evacuated horses from Boulder. At 6 a.m., I realized that the smoke was getting really, close to the house, and I needed to get all these animals out, and 2 owners showed up, not by being negligent, just because they couldn't make it to Malibu. My first horse trailer left Moore Park at 6:30 and didn't arrive to my house until 2. At around 11:30, I walked from my house across the street from Joffrey's to Canaan to try to figure out where this trailer was, because potentially we'd have to walk down to PCH to get these horses, in. I couldn't see anything. I mean, I had the worst blisters on my feet and probably looked like a crazy person, but the traffic was not moving. No one was going the other way, but the traffic was so bad and bumper to bumper, and you know, like Gina, our next door neighbor, like she was the same. We were loading horses on PCH that day. And then the calls that we got for the next 4 days, I know that there's been a lot of anger about people like leaving animals. Most people didn't have the resources, or you know, people weren't able to get in. And something really frustrating that happened, I was sitting at Canyon and the 101 with 4 horse trailers, and they were letting people in with press passes. And we were trying to go get animals that were in serious danger. We had 2 llamas, one that was really badly burned. And the police refused to let us in. And I literally looked at the cop and I said, sorry, I don't mean to throw you guys under the bus, but if I go to Kinko's right now and I make a fake press pass, are you guys going to let me in? And they responded, we have to let in press passes. So my friend and I went to Kinko's and made fake press passes, and we got in. You know, I'm all about the press. I know CeCe's going to kill me for thinking that I made a fake press pass, but like I just don't understand how it's fair that the press is able to come in, but we weren't able to go and get animals. And we got those calls for the next 4 days, and you know, when the press passes stopped working, we went behind the Christmas tree lot at Canaan. We were going through like back roads, and you know, we had to leave to get these animals out of there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have left. My mom's house burned down. I left the first night to go get her situated, and after that, like you know, a lot of people talked about, I'm never going to leave again. So I think that having a proper evacuation plan is really important. And then also figuring out, because we are, you know, surfer community and horses, and so many people have animals, and you know, like we went and picked up 3 horses on Deer Creek that were tied to a pole for 3 days. A lot of animals were left in buildings because, you know, people had to get their families out, their children out when, you know, Bonzel and Bush were burning, and horses literally burned to death in stalls. So we may have not lost a lot of humans, but we lost a lot of animals.
Yeah, I sure did.
I'd love if we can figure out a solution and be part of CeCe's process of like figuring out how I never got an evacuation notice. We have that thing around our driveway, and I share a driveway with 5 different people. The pink thing that said that the houses were checked on, no one came up there. And when the Wi-Fi went out, my cell phone doesn't work up there. I never got an evacuation notice. So that's all.
Thank you, Jessica. And obviously, animals are a very important part of our life. And I thought I saw a picture somebody posted on one of the websites of a llama sitting by Zoom, and I thought that was the ultimate. Wow, Malibu's got llamas and they're on the beach. So, you know, as we've all heard today from our distinguished panel up here, everybody wants to help. Nobody's going against the grain here. This is all about getting help for us. Whether it's emergency operations, whether it's planning commission, whether it's building, we all want to grow and surpass where we are right now. Because you can't get much lower than we are right now. You know, there's a lot of fear, anger, resentment, but from that comes strength. And I'm hopeful. I'm going to open it up in a second so you don't have to hear me speak. I'm going to open up the room for questions and answers, but hopefully we can continue to grow as a community, because that's what this is all about. Community-based meeting. This is an NGO, non-governmental organization. These are individuals that are putting this on. There's 2 people I would like to thank because they've worked so hard and tirelessly. First, obviously, is our hostess, CeCe Woods. And the second is a gentleman who works at Lost Hills, who has been instrumental in helping the citizens of this community at all times, prior, post, and during, Lieutenant James Royal. Here comes the question and answer. When you have a question, raise your hand, I'll call on you, one at a time, and speak loudly because you're not going to have the microphone. Tommy?
Yeah, I'm Tom Fagan, been a resident of this community for
48 years, and I've been a political activist in paper. CeCe does in digital media what I used to do. Doctor, we had a doctors network that used to work under Scott Bateman and some of the other doctors. They had facilities underneath the courthouse. The problem is, as people age, young doctors that move to the community don't come in and continue the organization. With reference to emergency large animal evacuations, when you get done talking, I'd like to address it. Thank you. We had a system set up underneath Sullivan. Not the guy on the rescue team, but his father. Animal control had a major evacuation plan. What happens is as people get old, the young people don't get involved. Look at your service clubs in the community. Lions 6. Kiwanis the same way. They're out of business. Optimus the same way. People don't get involved. So when it's old people leave, and I am old, I'm 76, when it's old people leave, the kids aren't taking our places and continuing with what we have learned right here today. So you're going to do it, you're going to set it up, and I absolutely agree. Arson Watch, everything else, we're going to be active. But our kids don't follow us. And that's what I want to say. So, are you an exception?
These are the kids over
Are
here.
you an exception?
I will say, I have to defend that.
Sorry, yeah.
That entire West Side Malibu relief
Yes.
effort
Yes.
was organized by Sam McGee, me, and these two girls.
It wasn't free. It was not free organized. You guys didn't practice like Search did.
But guess what? Nobody else did it.
I fought my own house. 6 hours. I'm 76. My wife's 71. She's in the back of the hose. We did the same thing. We are a survivor, and I don't feel guilty because we are survivors. My only message is we have had everything you've talked about in place. And as we age, as we die off, as we move out of the area, the young people aren't coming in and replacing us. We see the same thing
He
with
means that as a demographic. That's what he's saying.
But whose fault is that?
Hey, I'm just saying,
You guys, we can turn this into a shouting match. It's going to be question and answer.
Can I just address that real quick? I think that the problem, Mr. Fakeney, and I know him and I know his son, and I've always been happy for everything that the Kiwanis Club and for they've done for us. But the reality is, there's never been a community spirit or a tradition of service in Malibu, and I'm not saying that anybody has failed, but I think that this at least could be that call where, okay, well, there might have been those organizations. Let's work on getting them actually integrated into our community, which is what needs to happen, and what we can use this to do that.
Sorry, everyone. That's the point of the website. That's just what I want you all to understand is that we're putting together an organized platform for emergency preparedness so everybody can be trained, so we have a disaster plan in place, so we have a communications area, so we have all of this for everybody. Whether you're 75 or you're 15 or you're 10 or whatever, we have it in place. That's what the .org is meant to do. Julie Tobias.
I have a question for our, first of all, I want to say congratulations to our new sheriff. Congratulations. My question is, will there be an after-action report? And if anybody's been found deficient in their duties, will they be relieved of them? Will there be an accountability factor? I know nobody wants to point fingers, but pointing fingers leads us to where we failed and where we can do better in the future. And from being a charter member of the Malibu Burnout Club, I would say there was a huge failure here. And it was really disconcerting for me to find my house burned Friday night. Some of my neighbors burned on Saturday. Some even burned on Sunday. So I know you can only speak for the Sheriff's Department, but will there be a sort of a global after-action report?
That after-action report is being written as we speak. There will be consequences to failure. When I took office on Monday, the weekend before I took office, I sent out messages to a group of executives, and I told them their services were no longer needed. And I said I campaigned on cleaning house, and I meant it, and I started the first day by cleaning house. And I have to start at the top and work my way down, but when we get to a point where people didn't do the job I expected them to do, they will not be in that job any longer. That is true.
Ted Vale, 44-year resident, formerly on the Planning Commission. I just want to point out for a number of people whose homes burned that there's a new law in California effective January 1, 2020. All new construction has to have solar. It probably won't apply to the burnouts, but it might be a good opportunity to consider that. It may apply to burnouts, but we'll add 10,000 to your home, but it's a good thing to consider to try to get the insurance company to support because it's a new law. That's all I have to say.
Stand up. Yes, hi. Does it have to be a question, or can it be an idea or a statement?
Give me an idea, but speak louder so we can hear you.
Yes, well, I'll try to do that. One of the things that I know happened when it came to getting in and out of the area, the police were doing their job in keeping out people from interrupting the crews that were trying to restore the power, the internet, all this sort of utilities that you need. And that is their job to do that. However, from reading, because I do live in a community here where we do have a hotline, there's a lot of sharing going on. A lot of good ideas came to the surface, and that was in other fires, like in the from what I understand, in the Santa Barbara fire. People were allowed to come to those roadblocks, and there were designated people who were cleared to be able to enter areas so that the roads weren't all blocked up with everybody on earth. And there was allowed to be exchanges of necessary medical supplies, food, ice, all these things. They were allowed to be transferred from one vehicle to another to those designated people to get them to places where so far it had not gotten there yet, because there were people stranded. They had no water, they had no power, they had no food, they had no, and it takes time to get all that going. So for that period of time, they were just, isolated and nowhere. And
Right.
the other thing is that I'm imagining, all these. The particular area that we're near is the Point Dume area. There were a lot of houses were not burned. There were a lot of houses were burned. It's like staggered, There's one house not, one is. So there's many, many properties that are ashes, that are just down to an ash. Now, when they start scooping up all that with the bulldozers and start clearing those lots simultaneously, and the winds are kicking up, there's going to be a lot of that toxic stuff in the air, and it's going to carry for miles, even to areas that are seemingly unaffected, and so there should be some sort of requirement to either wet those areas down first, so that the debris is not airborne. I know this.
Somehow the vacuum cleaning places. It is some sort of equipment.
I can't
exist.
I can't speak to the problems
because
that
we
would
all
cause.
breathe them.
Okay. So there's a lot. I know it adds a lot of weight to the debris. When you wet it down, it's going to make everything very heavy. I don't know how that's going to affect the operation or the cost of it or how fast that. I don't know those things. I'm not knowledgeable in all that stuff to be able to answer those questions. I'm just posing the idea so that perhaps some of these things can be considered and put into play requirement-wise. Okay. Thank you.
Maybe we should have Bobby Kennedy Jr. answer that. He might be more qualified to.
Some of the cities, and I'm not sure about Malibu, have ordinances that prohibit cleanup until the debris has been tested. I don't know if that's true in Malibu.
Yes.
Ultimately, you need to get a debris cleanup company that is licensed and certified for, in some cases, hazardous waste disposal, to come in and do the cleanup in your house. That's
What about the area, carrying it throughout? The toxins carried.
There's toxins that were carried. I mean, like I said, there's, you know, all that stuff up at the 2,800 acre site. That site is not only covered with toxic vegetation that has been uptaking for many years with this so-called phytoremediation program. It's been uptaking all the dioxin and the polyaromatic hydrocarbons, the radionuclides, and all of that stuff burned. Plus, the entire place is, the site is covered by a kind of goo-like substance that is infiltrated with a witch's brew of toxic chemicals, and all of that stuff is incinerated. So it's likely that a lot of the stuff that dropped down on Malibu, I don't know if you know it, but there was Boeing, which owns that site and is responsible for the toxics, was supposed to have it cleaned up by 2017. They didn't do it because they were able to exercise control over the California agency, the California Toxic Substances Agency. There are people in Simi Valley, including places like Chatsworth, have cancer clusters of leukemia because the children have strontium-90 in their bones. And when you get the strontium-90 into you, it goes into your teeth, it goes into your bones, and it never leaves. And you get leukemia. Many, many people get leukemia from it after a certain time. There's cancer clusters of particular kinds of leukemia in Simi Valley and Chatsworth that are related to this facility. And a couple of years ago, Boeing quietly settled a case with 131 people who had leukemia for $30 million. They never cleaned up the site. They're supposed to clean up the site. All that stuff is still up there. And the wind carried it almost certainly down on Malibu during this fire. It's something that we are, Ryan Strange's firm and Michael Baum, who's here too, that firm, we have people who are investigating right now and trying to find more answers. The people like you who are concerned, who are directly, and my sister who lives in Point Dume. I recently moved away from Point Dume, but many of my friends are there, including Brian and Michael, and we are deeply concerned about this potential for transportation of these particulates into, the neighborhoods where we live. But we have no way. We're going to be doing swabs of people's houses. We're going to be doing soil and ash analysis, and we're already starting this process.
I'm sorry to meet everybody under these circumstances, but my name is Eric Cooper. I'm actually a former resident from this area, 6150 Ramirez. I now live in the Great Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. 2 years ago, November 28th, we had our fire. I evacuated about 40 people and got them off the mountain safely with no evacuation notice whatsoever. I'm also a documentary filmmaker. Look forward to talking to Mr. Lee. Would like to share with you what I've learned about some of the information I didn't have. Before becoming a filmmaker, my background was in catastrophic claims and risk management. I handled September 11th and developed PTSD. I also handled the Oklahoma City bombing before that. The stuff that we're exposed to is critically important. If you leave with no other information today, please leave with this. You have been exposed to smoke, char, soot, and ash if you were in this area when there was a fire. Char is carcinogenic. That component is probably in your house if your house survived. Here's how you get your insurance company to trigger it. Now I'm going to wear my risk management hat. Let them know that you smell smoke in your house today, if your house still exists. They will come with an expert who will do all kinds of tests from swabs to sucker machines and pull the air particulate matter out of your house. Here's what your policy says. Any is the key word. If you have any smoke, soot, char, or ash in your house, it's covered. What does that mean? It's in the walls behind here. It's behind the switch plates. It's in the ceiling. It's in your insulation. It's everywhere. Don't be exposed to the respiratory stuff. I suffered about 6 months after, not realizing what in the world was bothering me. I figured smoke would just eventually clear your lungs. It didn't. And I still have shortness of breath working in the yard today, 2 years later. So if you've heard nothing else today, please take into serious consideration call your insurance company, make sure that you smell smoke in your house. Secondly, do wear proper respiratory protection around the community, because even on a generally low windy day, 2 miles, 10 miles an hour, it is spreading. That's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
My name is Bill Stang. I'm a resident for a long time, second generation here. I have a question and then kind of an observation. My question is, on Friday morning, the Pacific Coast Highway, did we still have inbound, eastbound flow from commuter traffic entering into a mandatory evacuation?
No, because the canyons were all shut at that point.
But I mean from Oxnard and Ventura.
Well, I don't know, LT, you want to address that?
Yeah, sure. My name is James Royal. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Malibu Liaison Lieutenant for Lost Hills Sheriff Station, and I have been since 2011. I've been at the station since 2006, and I'd like to introduce a friend of mine, my partner Mike Trinan over here, has been here since 2002. And we know this community well, and we love this community, and I just want to thank you guys first for showing up today. We need to hear your input, we need to hear your stories, and we are dedicated to fixing the stories, and I really want to thank the sheriff for coming today and reaching out to me and I want to throw a big shout out to these young people who I witnessed at and do this. We can do this. To address your question, there was a lot of chaos, as you can imagine, no excuses from 2 o'clock on Thursday when I started this fight until the next morning into Friday. There were a lot of moving parts. The question is, northbound PCH was open and people were coming southbound, and there were mistakes made at a macro level, but we're dedicated to doing an after-action report and fixing all of those, but we need your input. And there are plans in place. Executing those plans, as the sheriff said earlier, is another issue. It's not a lack of a plan necessarily, it's making that plan happen under pressure. And we're acknowledging mistakes. We want to hear your input, and I promise you we will work with you to fix them.
That whole thing, it's a scenario. I come from a first responder family, and I will never want to see an active firestorm coming over the ridge and having 70, 80,000 cars in gridlock on the coast highway. We had no signals. Either the signals were flashing red or they were completely dead. We had gas stations that were shut down for obvious reasons. I totally understand that. One of the items that's going to be most important in my eyes as a problem solver is when I understand when SCE shuts the power off. Obviously, it's for a reason. It's really hard for me to wrap my head around that, because that means as soon as you shut the electricity off, you've lost all of the traffic lights. We've lost cell service. You have the general public in an emergency situation with no comm at all. People could have absolutely freaked, and they didn't. They held it together, and that's all of us and all the people who decided to leave. I think there should be dedicated locations for cell towers. Nobody wants them in their backyard. I understand that, because the beams that they put out, the microwave coverage. However, there should be dedicated areas where there's cell phone towers that have standby power systems on them. The same thing with Caltrans. Caltrans should have backup batteries on all of these signals. So just like in the car commercials, car pulls up, those lights all turn green in the Santa Monica. No problems. I think without communication, I mean, how many people here have cell phones? This was absolutely useless when the power went down. That is the most scariest thing that I can think of. The only things that did work for a while were the landlines. And I think that needs to be dedicated as part of an infrastructure for this mass evacuation here, because it's going to happen again. And it could have been a completely different scenario. But, and I thank everybody for being here as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you said, because I wrote an article and I called it the highway of death. And if anybody's, and most of us are old enough to remember Baghdad, you know, God forbid the fire jumps. You've got all these cars in gridlock, not necessarily right next to the water, there's properties involved. You wouldn't have gotten out. And they would have been dead bodies up and down this coast. So I fully agree. The other problem with power, and I'll get to your questions, multiple pumps for fire did not have power. There was no backup generators in place. They brought them after the fact, but we need them in place beforehand, such as backup batteries or backup power for cell service. And I agree, a dedicated cell tower. Somebody had talked about a commercial range of frequencies just for first responders for emergencies. You know, I'm not a computer guy, I don't know that, but I know that there is other ways to get around. Because very candidly, when I was coming in these lines, I had people call me, can you check my house? I was a point of information for a lot of people. I was sending out photos. Your house is safe, your house isn't safe. But it was hard to find cell service, because I know that I would drive to certain areas and I'd stop my car because my phone would start beeping. I knew I had cell service. And you're absolutely right. Who's next? Right here.
In 2004, I moved here and I saw a need for evacuation centers. And so when the tsunami from Thailand came over, it came over weeks later. And I lived out on County Line Beach, and the water was coming over the house, and I had buckets in the bathroom getting the water. And I said, where do you go for evacuation? Because the mudslides were happening. Like, well, we don't have anything. And I said, well, let's create something. So with the CERT team, and being a member of the CERT team, we created the disaster bin program, and a year later we set it down. And so there's one all over here for evacuations, and they've been used. Were they opened on Point Dume while you're trying to get supplies for water? Why, when fire and police have that availability, is that not available, accessible? There's water, there's food, there's everything that's basic for a few days, and we don't even know they exist. I think it's mandatory that we all take the CERT training, that we all have our neighborhoods, and these have been put in place for you since 2004. They were there. They were waiting.
There's one right across the street.
Yeah. Why weren't they opened?
Yeah, well, that's again,
That's a city thing.
that's a Park City. I mean, there was a Connex that was open at Trancas. I saw it open. They did get some members out there to open it up. And, you know, I believe there's 10 Connexes in the city.
But there's one in Point Dume in the elementary school. They're trying to get supplies in clandestinely around the edge.
Well, they're bringing them by water too.
Yeah, there's
we had water taxes.
supplies. They should be immediately open.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I heard that one of the containers wasn't open because the decision was made that it was earthquake supplies like blankets and cots. But I will tell you, if that bus hadn't shown up at Point Dume Elementary, I would have been sleeping next to gas cans on the floor. So a cot and a blanket would have been awesome. Like, it was getting cold there. We were there for 3-4 days. So I think whoever's making the decision that this supplies is not necessary should talk to someone on the ground, like the people who actually need it.
I've got one thing to add to that. There's a strong push for people to start joining CERT right now, and I understand and somewhat support that idea. But I was one of the many people who I believe contacted the CERT Instagram website. Hey, you know, I took your classes. I was here. What is it that you need me to do? Where can I go? What, you know, and at the same time, you know, we're actually actively helping people on Point Dume already. And the response was never crack open the bin and get to work passing out supplies that are in there. It was take care of your family and hunker down. So, you know, on the one hand, I want to respect the organization. On the other hand, I think everybody's got some blame here, you know, CERT included. And you know, I know that they've been down there and been extremely helpful after the fact, and I just, you know, Richard was there.
Yeah, Richard was there.
Whatever it was, I know that there have been a lot of people that have been reaching out to them that weren't able to get that information, open the bin, you know, like, so,
Well,
I don't know.
I gotta say a couple things about that if I could. I live on Point Dume, I've been there for 36 years, and I stayed the whole time. I went down to our Trancas bin Friday night about 7 p.m. and started ferrying water and supplies up to Station 71 and to various spots on Zuma Beach. I did the same thing Saturday.
morning, and then one of our other members, Schiffer Wilder, and I were at the Point Dume Relief Center. And we started going, I think it was Sunday night, once you all started, the fabulous job you did setting that up. It would have been wonderful if we had the supplies in our CERT bins that you all had. Big problem with the bins is it's like anything else. It's like insurance. You have to maintain the supplies. Everything expires, everything goes bad. And for the CERT people, we're all volunteers. Most of us have like 6-day-a-week jobs. It's very hard to put enough time in as a volunteer to maintain training for first aid for every other responsibility we have, and to stock the bins. I'm trying to get our radio communication stuff up and a new repeater for us too. Lester's working on that too. Another Peter Banner, another one of our members is working on the logistics of getting the bins resupplied. But we really need to get the containers stocked with what a lot of the things that we've learned in this circumstance. A lot of the things that are really practical for people to use. So yeah, I was there Friday night. I opened Trancas. By Saturday, I'd been in the Point Dume bin. Got everything out by Sunday that we could actively use. Got it to Helen, got it to the other people that were at the Point Dume Relief Center. If we had more, we would have done more with it. A big problem with just, one second, Keegan. Big problem with just opening them is at the Point Dume Center, we had people taking 85 rolls of toilet paper, one person, okay? Cases of things, and if you'd say, hey, we have a limited amount of resources that came in through a very difficult way, typically by boat, please take what you need. If those bins were open, I mean, in no time, everything that was there, whether it was usable or not, it would basically look like a Who House after the Grinch. There'd be nothing.
That was an organized community response to that thing. That didn't happen when they had all their supplies there. People weren't just coming in and looting the supply depots. So why would you expect that?
I will make a comment. I was on the CERT team for many a year. Lester knows, and I was instrumental in talking to the city when I was on public safety of making sure that we had water for all the residents. We only had enough water for 1,000 residents, and there's 13,000 people. And it's in the public record when I spoke at public safety. We need more stuff in the bins, and obviously we had a change in emergency management within the city. And since we've had to change in emergency management, those bins have not been taken care of like they should have been. So one of the biggest problems is it's the guys on the ground at CERT level working, but they got to have equipment to work with. If they don't have the goods, there's no point opening up a Connex. Yeah, Lester.
Hi, I'm Lester Sapp, 35-year resident of Malibu, and also the head of the CERT team. The only thing I can say to you, or what I will say to you, is we, in the past year, have been working diligently to get the bins stocked, to work on radio communication throughout the city, and we ran out of time. We just flat ran out of time. We have a proposal going to the council for communication, additional communication that Richard wrote. It would have gone to the next meeting. It just didn't happen. My question to you is how many of you are willing to join us now, wait a minute, let me finish, to put in the time each month and to work and train. We've only had about 20 people. We didn't have enough boots on the ground at the time. Without Richard, we would have been in real trouble. But if we had a lot of people, a lot more people, we would have done a better job.
Just real quick, right? So my question to you is why would we want to join a group that has been proven ineffective? Going through the city hasn't worked for you. So I'm not saying that you guys have done a bad job. What I'm saying is you guys are going through a process that hasn't been effective. So my question is, why should we say, hey, I'm willing to join CERT when I am a CERT, I have a CERT ID, and why would I be encouraged to do that process?
Let's be real clear. There's two issues here. The city council, in I guess it was resolution 1737, established their connection with the CERT program that a lot of you took. From there, they also established the Malibu CERT team. Those are disaster service workers. The disaster service workers are the one who train, who are working on the bins, who are working on the communication. You're saying we were ineffective. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you had given us one more year, the bins would have been fine. No, don't say that. As Richard said, we are volunteers. We can't do it instantaneously.
Well, you should be paid
Right?
by the city.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen.
All I can say is, we were getting there. We didn't make it, and that's our failure. So you're right, we weren't perfect. But we are working on it. We are going to get there, and if you join us, we'll get there that much quicker. No, you're not a member. You're not a member of the disaster service. You have to go through the additional training. Yeah, but I am, Lester.
Hey, stop, please. Listen. Outside of CERT, my observation is that the breakdown was a lack of empowerment to CERT from the city and fire and sheriff, right? Yes. Wait, hold on. Okay, city, fire, whatever, right? Without CERT having the ability to be able to get past checkpoints and an awareness, etc., right? If alerts go out that there are evacuation notices, there needs to be alerts that go out on behalf of CERT saying, if you are here and you aren't leaving and you need a resource, these are the safe zones with CERT resources. That is, I'm not saying that's not your fault. That's just part of the, in the future, that needs to be part of that plan, is that the access to the hard work you guys have done, and hopefully will continue to do, is that access and awareness. I had no idea that we had a CERT bin at Point Dume Elementary.
Yeah, right.
If I knew that, whether the city, the fire, anybody were to have pointed us that way, where we could have connected with you guys, where we could have opened it up, that would have been great.
One more thing about CERT. The Public Safety Director, Susan Duenas, is in charge of activating CERT. Now, there has been some type of confusion as to whether she did or whether she didn't, and their IDs did not get through LASD. And bottom line is, CERT was not activated. This was supposed to be her baby since she got here, what, over a year ago? No, yeah, okay. So that was supposed to be her baby. So the fact that she's supposed to take care of the CERT team, train them for disaster, and they still need more time, that's a problem, like a big problem. Yeah. So bottom line is, we need to establish our own type of CERT, especially for those of us who don't want to have to wait for Susan Duenas to give us a phone call and say, hey, you're activated. We work directly with LASD, which is part of what this website is supposed to do. It's supposed to empower us, the county part, so that we can work directly with law enforcement, get our IDs, get trained, get through roadblocks, and get people taken care of. So that's the bottom line. We don't need to wait another year to help CERT get certified by a city who doesn't want to do the job to begin with. So we need to do it ourselves. That's the bottom line.
Say one quick thing. All I'm saying is that fire had the ability to get into those bins, and police should have the ability to get into those bins. You don't have to wait for the CERT lady to do whatever and give the phone call. This is an emergency. It's an emergency evacuation.
They weren't going to know where the bins were.
That's another thing. How come our community doesn't know? And we have these alert systems. Right. We need to know the locations of them, and the city should be responsible for that.
I call from the relief center that they need the Neosporin and something on the first day. They didn't even have that much. Remember? I was talking to them, and they go, "We need this, we need that." The first thing that I could possibly get on the first day when all the roads still closed and the fire, I brought all this medical supply. If they would know, they are relief center, and they didn't have any of that.
Okay, everybody, our sheriff, who is nice enough to come here today and spend some time with us. He is going to make a closing statement right now, but we're still going to continue to take questions afterwards, okay? Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, CeCe. I want to thank everyone for their honest opinions. There's a lot of concern here, a lot of rightful preoccupation with how we handle disasters, especially of this magnitude. Bear in mind, in a perfect world, if there's a disaster area, the big thing is going to come. We get everybody out, and we don't have to worry about what's inside the big thing that happened. And then everybody is evacuated to an area where there is all the resources that you can provide. You can provide medical care, you can provide food, housing, and all these things. And then once the situation is calm, then you can repopulate that area that's all been basically wiped off the map. However, when people decide to shelter in place, now you make a more complex element because now there's people inside that need the resource, that need the food, the housing, or whatever it may be. Or people that lost their housing that decided to stay in place, but now they're in the impacted area and they have to come out. So we've created some elements of complexity to the scenario. That's why when it's time to evacuate, have a good evacuation plan, execute it. We're going to make sure you have the information, hey, it's time to go, okay? Make sure all your valuables are secured, safeguarded for fire, and get out. Okay, we'll handle the rest. If you have animals, get the animals out, please. Don't leave it. There should not be any horse that ever dies burned in a barn. Set them free. Worst case scenario. But what I'm trying to say is, we'll deal with all these elements of complexity, but let's work to make them less complex. If you're going to if you decide to shelter in place, you want to save your house, please have a week or two of supplies in your house, so you don't have to then be scrambling around trying to find resources. That's part of, if you're going to be self-sufficient, we'll be self-sufficient. Not halfway, that you need somebody else to bail you out. So take ownership of the problem yourself where you can, and we're going to work everything we can to make sure those who are vulnerable, that cannot defend themselves, are the ones we're going to take care of. And we're going to help you as much as we can. We're going to make sure PCH goes one way only, all lanes, and I have another place to go to. You've got a burning question over there.
Yes, because about the PCH one way, because I was leaving very late when it is already was a traffic at standstill, and all of a sudden 2 people completely separate themselves and went. And I went behind them. Nobody stopped us, and everybody was telling, oh, this one is open. I said, why the people, they are not directing the people. Nobody stopped anybody, but the other side was completely open, and the people were suffering for 4 hours in one way, when the other way was completely unintended.
That's part of our after-action report. We'll work hard to resolve that. Thank you, everyone.
Hold on, we're not done.
Hey everybody, my name is Marx. I live on Ramirez Canyon.
He's our planning commissioner.
But I wanted to call one thing out, just as an individual in that. One second. Just as an individual in that community, I took a look. We took a walk down the canyon. Okay, is this? Can you guys hear me better? Okay, so we took a walk down the canyon in our community, about a quarter mile to a half mile in. And there was already about 4 to 6 feet of debris, mud, rock, etc. at the bottom of our creek. The hillsides have no protection on them. They're literally just, 200-300 feet high of rock and debris, just with no vegetation. I'm not sure on that one, but my main observation is just if you live at a creek level, just be aware. Try to take a look at the maps on what the canyon looks like behind you. Recognize that it doesn't take sustained rain over months, which is a historical problem here in the city. It's flash events, like what'll tend to trigger these flows after the burn is if rain comes really intense for 15-20 minutes. So be aware if you live at those lower areas, whenever the rain events are coming, you just try to get 20, 40, 60 feet higher. The flows won't necessarily follow a creek. They'll follow just a trajectory based on how a 40-ton or a 40,000-ton boulder tends to move down a hill. So don't assume that if you're above the creek, you're okay. If things move in a catastrophic manner, they don't follow creeks. So just be careful if you're in anything within, I would say, 10 to 20 feet of a creek level. When you go to bed, if there's going to be rain, try to get yourself 40, 60 feet higher at least, is what I'm observing. Because we're already seeing in that walk, we saw 4 to 6 feet of mud and debris on the bottom of the creek itself, 2 to 4 foot just on the shoulders of the creek, a lot of just damaged and trees that are just ready to fall over from the burns already as well. So just an observation for those of us that lived in Canyon area.
Thank you. And we are going to have updated FEMA maps on our website, courtesy of Don Schmitz and his associates. Here, Tracy.
Hi, my name is Tracy, and I live at Point Dume. And since the day of the fires, I did evacuate, and then I attended and then I wasn't allowed back in, and then I attended the evacuee meeting in Santa Monica. And what I got out of that was a lot of bureaucracy that was going to be necessary for everybody to do their rebuild. And my background is project management and information systems, and I'm certified and all that good stuff. So I started making contacts with some large corporations for an IT solution. And then I started building and having many, many conversations with at the county level. And so I am currently working with HP, the IT disaster recovery responder consortium, and then I'm now most recently working with the Los Angeles Disaster Preparedness Foundation. And I have Steve Jensen here with me today, and he just has a couple of points that he wants to make, and very, very informational, especially with regard to disaster. He's worked all over the world, and with the whole Edison issue, etc.
Yeah, thanks very much. This is what love looks like in public, all right? Okay? Yeah. It's not always easy. This is good. You don't find your way through. Yeah. Just 3 quick things. We're really supportive of the people that chose to stay and defend. As long as we can do that with a reasonable degree of safety, I think that's going to be very important. We're starting a study so we can understand the attitudes and the behaviors of people that did that, so we can feed that information back to your organization so you can be a lot more effective when you go about this kind of very important action. That's what our systems are going to look like a lot more in the future. You know, fire's not going to staff up more. We're not going to have enforced fire stations, engines. This is reality. Is be able to stay and defend. So we want to figure out how to do that better. Second thing, we're doing a comprehensive study of all the measures that need to come into place to deal with the fire problems, not just in Malibu, but across California. So we're looking at things like land use and vegetation management, building practices, the firefighting systems, all these things we have to look at in a systematic way. And more importantly, we want to look at governance. We're very aware of the problems that you had here in Malibu. What's going to take to actually be able to get a lot of this stuff done and get it done in a timely way. So we think there's a window of opportunity at the state level to be able to put a reasonable paper before them as a new administration comes in place. And we think maybe this will be used in your community as well, maybe even as a pilot today, and how you can actually move some of these things forward. So we're going to be looking for your help in that in the coming months. We're going to move quickly on that one. Third thing that I wanted to mention is regarding the power lines and the problems that came out of Southern California Edison. And it's not just here, but it's fire starts from PG&E up north as well. I was recently with a group down in Australia that had done some very extensive studies of the problem of power companies and their lines inadvertently starting fires. They did some excellent analysis and determined at least a lot of the intermediate lines needed to go underground, and I was going to save a heck of a lot of money in the long haul. But we would love to see that kind of study replicated here. They've got the methodology, they've got the understanding about how to do this, and I think we have a lot longer term view of how these things could really help reduce risk. So anyway, we're here to help, and our CEO, Brent Woodworth, lives in the community, and we just want to help in any way we can.
What's the name of the company or the study?
Yeah, it's Los Angeles Emergency Preparedness Foundation, and we'll make sure that CeCe has all the contact details, Tracy has the details.
Do you have a copy of the study that you referenced?
It's just starting. All the Power line
From
study?
Australia, yeah.
I can get that to you.
Great.
Yeah, they did a phenomenal job with this. Really strong analysis using geographic information systems, and they nailed it.
Awesome. Thank you.
And again, this is part of what the website is going to do. It's going to work with entities like this and with Tracy. Hold on.
Yeah, we're going to try to start in the next 10 days a business operations center as working with Los Angeles County. And it's going to be open to the Woolsey fire victims only, for anyone who has been impacted. And it's going to help you through the process. Like I said, I'm a project manager, and I'm developing a single source area for you to go to. Just think of it as the HR block of Woolsey. So you go in, you get to sign in, register, use a computer, you'll have a fax, you'll have all of the things that you need in order to complete your project rebuild. And a single database will be created as a result of this, and all of the entities that we've been hearing about, the foundations, will be part of this Business Operations Center with the help of Steve, I hope, and HP, and the IT consortium. So working on that. I don't really have much to say, but it will be on CeCe's website.
Well, it's not just my website, it's everybody's website. Okay,
Everybody's
so
website.
it's everybody's website. Anybody else? Anybody?
I just want to, I want to thank, I was evacuated and I felt like I was useless because I couldn't get back in, but I was writing on Nextdoor and people were saving dogs that had burnt paws, and I just want to thank everybody who, you know, I was writing but I couldn't do anything, but thank you everybody for all that you did.
Anybody else? Sorry, I'll do.
Yes, Captain,
Whoops.
I had two questions. The first one has to do with rebuilding. I think Mr. Tobias, if I understand. He's not. Okay. With regard to rebuilding, does anybody know relative to whether the city will expedite the placement of RVs or motorhomes while people rebuild? And the second thing is with regard to a possibility of volunteer fire districts. Maybe Keith can talk about that. Is anybody exploring that?
One of our planning commissioners is here. I'm going to put him on the spot. Well, you're going to hear it.
Hi, how are you? The first question is with regard to possibility of putting RVs and trailers for a longer period of time on properties while people rebuild. And the second one, I don't know if you can feel it, but the possibility of volunteer fire departments in the various regions where you folks are organizing by neighborhood. What about volunteer fire departments because they can get federal funding and such?
The first, if you can hear me better this time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The first item, I have heard talk of the temporary housing on the structure. I don't know anything on the details on that yet, though. That will come from staff. That will be brought. We as the planning commission won't make that decision. Most of the
Speak up, please.
Sorry.
Speak a little louder,
Here, can you stand up, Chris?
Yeah.
Look,
Sorry. So yeah, as far as the decisions related to rebuilding individual structures, that will come more through city staff, not through the planning commission. It'll probably be a separate channel, which won't even have to come in front of us. And I'm not sure on timing on how long temporary housing would be allowed. And as far as I know, currently it is not yet allowed. So you know, I don't have any other update on that. Sorry. The other question you had then?
I don't know if George.
The second question was
Possibility
volunteer fire.
Volunteer fire.
I've got something to add to that. Yeah, I don't know how many of you guys watched the city council meeting on, what was that, last Tuesday? But the only volunteer fire department that I know of in Malibu was the call firefighters that were up in Corral Canyon. And they had their own fire engine. They'd practice for, 2 weekends a month for 10 years. And the second that the fire actually came to their neighborhood, the one that they'd tried to prepare to defend, their fire engine was taken from them, right? So again, it kind of goes back to my question of why would any of us or any of the citizens here in Malibu trust an organization like either the federal or state or local government when the only people that we know that will be here are our neighbors. That's kind of where at least my thought is at, and the group that I've started working with is also there.
Hey, wait. Do you have something?
No. I have one quick thing. earlier, people were talking about the debris removal process. The city has already posted this. I know a lot of people don't follow the city stuff, but LA County is currently already going and assessing everybody's properties and for hazardous waste. You cannot opt out of it, and it's not voluntary. And they will come assess your property and remove the hazardous waste on their own time. Everybody's addresses for who has been assessed are being posted on the site, and you can contact the LA County directly about when your property is being removed. So I'm not sure why nobody knew about that already, but it's already going on, and so yeah.
That's why we need a website and a central place.
It's on Facebook, it's on City of Malibu website, and it's on LA County.
I know, but some people don't like to go to the places. Well, yes, sorry.
No, go ahead, Brianna.
I just wanted to ask someone on the planning commission. It seems like it would be very useful to expedite getting people temporary housing and to not have this lag for a long time so people can get back to their community and start rebuilding. So perhaps there's a collective way we can address whoever will ultimately make that decision. I'm happy to write a letter on everyone's behalf if anyone wants help, but can you tell us who exactly will make that decision and who we direct this to so it's not lost in the shuffle?
Yeah, what we can all do is on the 17th will be our first planning commission meeting. As you can all expect, it's not like we left at our last session and said, okay, next time we'll be ready to talk about the results of the fire. You know, no one saw this coming. The way that meeting goes, as with the city council meetings, so everyone might be aware, is you'll have a public comment section at the start. That's a time where you can get that voiced just with the agreement.
But the 17th is still,
Understood,
I'm
understood.
like now.
You can also send a letter directly to either Riva or Bonnie Blue. Bonnie Blue is the director of planning, and so she would be probably
call
the
the
one to make
mayor.
the decision.
What is your deadline? Call him.
The agenda is already posted. Yeah, so if you go to the website, you'll see the posting of the agenda, and it's a pretty much standard agenda. I mean, just as I said, it's not like we saw this coming. So the normal agenda is posted, but again, public comments for each.
What about emergency agendas?
You can propose something there as well. That process, I'm not positive, I don't know how that would move, but it would go through Bonnie, I would think, as a starting point, Bonnie Blue for the planning director.
Thank you.
I would just like to introduce Captain Dennis Neer, who works on a regional level for the sheriff, and on all of the sheriff's issues that you experienced during this with the blockades and all of those issues. I can assure you going forward, I know Dennis adheres to the community policing model, and that we'll be working together to address some of these, and I just want to hand it off to him for a few short comments.
I'll make my comments very brief, but a couple issues stand out to me, and that is community engagement and adversity in coming here today. The community engagement from this community is like nothing I've seen before. And I live in a small community out in Leona Valley, but the engagement here after such a devastating disaster, it's very clear to me that although you're dealing with adversity, it's not whether or not you're going to have adversity, it's how you confront it, how you deal with it. And you guys are really strong. It's very clear that you're going to rebuild, you're going to recover, and you're going to be stronger than you ever were before. And we want to be a partner. We, as your sheriff's department, we want to partner with you, and we're going to learn. There's some things that we did well. There's some things we didn't do well in terms of the evacuation, in terms of working with other agencies to best serve you, our community. So we're going to learn. We're going to apply those lessons learned not only here in your community, but elsewhere throughout Los Angeles County. And so again, thank you for having us here today. We look forward to partnering with you as we move forward, learning from this experience, and assisting you in any way that we can. Thank you.
Who's next? Anybody? Anybody?
Wrap it up.
No, you wrap it up.
All right. Thank you for coming to this first engagement, and hopefully, if you have any questions, comments, post it on the website, and we will answer your comments.
The email for the website is info@malibu90265.org. We are going to schedule another meeting. send questions. Whoever wants to participate in neighborhood councils, I want to hear from you. We need 2 to 3 people per every neighborhood from Big Rock to county line. So we need to cover county as well as city because we don't want to just be stuck with dealing with just city stuff. We want to be able to deal directly with county officials and authorities. Okay? Yes. Please. Info at Malibu 90265.